The conference room smelled like aggressive cologne and desperation. You know the scent? It's that specific, nausea-inducing mix of ozone from overheating laptops and the distinct musk of nepotism. I was sitting at the mahogany table, the one I had personally argued we couldn't afford 5 years ago when we were still coding out of a damp basement in Georgetown, watching Derek pace back and forth like a tiger raised on Adderall and TED Talks. Derek was the founder's son, a man who genuinely believed the cloud was something you could touch if you stood on a tall enough ladder. I'm Harper. I'm the lead systems architect. Or rather, I was the person who knew where all the digital bodies were buried because I was the one who dug the graves. I'm 45. I don't dye my grays because I earned every single silver strand debugging race conditions at 3 a.m., and I have absolutely zero patience for corporate theater. Before we dive deeper into this train wreck, let me know in the comments, what city or country are you watching this from? I always want to know where my stories are landing. We need to talk about velocity, Derek said, stopping to admire his reflection in the pristine glass wall that overlooked the DC skyline. He was wearing a fleece vest that likely cost more than my first car. We need to talk about trimming the fat. The room went silent. It was that heavy, suffocating kind of silence where you can hear the hum of the HVAC system and the collective spiking of blood pressure. There were 12 of us in the room, engineers, product leads, data scientists. People with mortgages. People with kids who needed braces. And then there was Derek, fresh out of an MBA program that apparently taught him that human beings are just rows in a spreadsheet you can delete to make the margins turn green. I took a sip of my lukewarm coffee. It tasted like battery acid and regret. Derek, I said, my voice scratching the air. Our velocity is fine. We just shipped the Q3 update with zero downtime. The architecture is stable. If you trim the fat now, you're going to cut into the muscle. He turned to me. The look in his eyes wasn't just dismissive, it was bored. It was the look of a man who had already made up his mind while playing golf on a Tuesday and was just going through the motions of pretending to care on a Thursday. Harper, he sighed, sounding like he was explaining gravity to a toddler. That's the problem. You're obsessed with stability. We need disruption. You've built a fortress, sure, but we need a speedboat. And frankly, your stack is looking a little vintage. Vintage. I felt a vein in my forehead throb of a rhythmic warning sign. I built the routing algorithm that cut our clients' delivery times by 18%. I wrote the redundancy protocols that saved this company's ass when the East Coast power grid flickered last winter. I was the one who translated his father's incoherent napkin scribbles into a logistics engine that was currently valued at $40 million. Vintage keeps the lights on, Derek, I said, keeping my tone level. I learned a long time ago that getting angry in a boardroom just makes you look emotional. Getting quiet makes you look dangerous. You want to disrupt the architecture? Fine. But do it after the holiday surge. If you start ripping out load balancers now, the whole system goes dark. Derek smirked. It was a practice smirk, one he probably practiced in the mirror every morning. See, that's the fear talking. We're moving to a new paradigm. Agile. Lean. Young. He paused for effect, tapping his manicured fingers on the table. Which brings me to the hard part. Harper, we're restructuring the architecture division. We're bringing in some outside consultants to modernize the stack, which means your role is redundant. The air left the room. My second in command, a brilliant kid named Ben, looked like he was about to vomit. He stared at me, eyes wide, waiting for me to explode, waiting for me to flip the table. Redundant, I repeated. The word hung there, heavy and stupid. We're calling it an evolutionary exit, Derek said, using a phrase that definitely came from a LinkedIn influencer with guru in his bio. Security is waiting in the lobby with a box. We'll need your badge and your laptop. Now. It was a power move. A public execution to show the rest of the pack who was the alpha dog. He wanted me to cry. He wanted me to beg. He wanted a scene he could recount over drinks at the country club. We fired the old guard to make way for the future. I stood up. My knees popped audibly. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was the calm of a demolition expert who knows the fuse is already lit and everyone else is just standing too close to the blast zone. I looked at the whiteboard covered in my diagrams, my logic, my life's work. You're firing me, I said clearly. Mid-quarter. Without a transition plan. Effective immediately, Derek said, checking his watch. We need fresh eyes, Harper. You're obsolete. Get out. I reached for my bag. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a fight. If he wanted to burn the house down, I wasn't going to hold the hose. I was just about to hand over my badge, my key to the kingdom I built, when my phone buzzed against the table. It wasn't a text. It was a call. And I never get calls during meetings. My phone was on silent, but the vibration rattled the mahogany like a tiny earthquake. I looked down. The screen lit up. The caller ID didn't say spam risk or mom. It said, Uber, VP Engineering. I stared at it. I knew him. Marcus. We'd met at a conference in Seattle 3 years ago. We'd stayed in touch, trading war stories about scaling databases and managing latency. He'd been trying to poach me for 18 months, but I'd always said no. I was loyal. I was the architect. This was my building. But now? Now I was redundant. The phone kept buzzing. Derek looked annoyed. Turn that off. You can take your personal calls in the parking lot. I looked at Derek. I looked at the team, the terrified faces of the engineers who knew exactly what was about to happen to their workload. Then I looked back at the phone. A twisted, dark thought bloomed in my mind. It was unprofessional. It was petty. It was absolutely perfect. I didn't decline the call. I didn't silence it. I swiped green. And then, maintaining dead eye contact with the man who just called me obsolete, I pressed speaker. This is Harper, I said. The voice that filled the silent boardroom was crisp, loud, and unmistakably desperate. Harper, thank God, Marcus's voice boomed. Look, my HR team just got a ping on your LinkedIn status update. Did you just toggle to open to work? Because if you did, I need you. We are drowning on this geofencing integration, and your paper on spatial indexing is the only thing that makes sense. I can get the offer letter over in 10 minutes. Double your current base. Full equity. Name your signing bonus. Just tell me you're free. The silence in the room changed. It shifted from the silence of a funeral to the silence of a bomb squad watching a wire get cut. Derek's smirk faltered. His brow furrowed. He looked at the phone, then at me. He clearly didn't understand what was happening. He thought it was a prank. He thought I was bluffing. Is this a joke? Derek laughed, a nervous barking sound. Who is that? It's Uber, Derek, I said, my voice ice cold. The competition. Take it, Derek sneered, doubling down on his stupidity because his ego wouldn't let him back up. If they want my scraps, let them have them. Go ahead. Take it. Marcus, on the other end of the line, heard him. Harper, who is that? Are you in a meeting? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf that just found the fence unlocked. Marcus, I said, loud enough for the back of the room to hear. I'm sitting with the COO of my current company. He just informed me that I'm obsolete. He says you can have me. He said what? Marcus asked, genuine shock in his voice. He said take the offer, I replied, never looking away from Derek. So Marcus. Send the doc. For a solid 10 seconds, the only sound in the room was the hum of the overhead projector cooling fan, sounding like a dying lung. Sending now, Marcus replied instantly. Check your personal email. And Harper, I'm not kidding about the bonus. We need you in Seattle by Monday if you can swing it. I'll expense the relocation. Just don't sign anything with those clowns until you see our numbers. Understood, I said. I'm hanging up now, Marcus. See you on the other side. The line clicked dead. I set the phone down on the table. The screen went black, reflecting Derek's face. He looked like someone who had just swallowed a bee but was trying to pretend it was a breath mint. His brain was trying to process two contradictory pieces of data. 1, Harper is a dinosaur who needs to be fired. And 2, one of the biggest tech giants in the world just offered to back up a money truck for her in less than 30 seconds. Derek chose option 1. Denial is a hell of a drug, especially when your daddy pays for the prescription. Well, Derek scoffed, adjusting his cuffs. That was theatrical. Did you set that up? Have your little boyfriend call and pretend to be a VP? My jaw tightened. Marcus is the VP of Engineering at Uber, Derek. You can Google him. You could check the attendee list of the TechCrunch Disrupt panel you were supposed to speak at last year, but skipped because you were networking in Ibiza. Ben, my second in command, finally spoke up. His voice was trembling. Derek, that was Marcus Lynn. He wrote the white paper on distributed hash tables. If he's calling Harper, it means nothing. Derek snapped, slamming his hand on the table. The cheap monitor shook. It means she's good at networking. Doesn't mean she can code for the modern web. We need React Native rockstars, not whatever legacy backend mess she's been hoarding. Ding. My phone lit up again. An email notification. Subject: Offer letter, Principal Infrastructure Architect. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I just let it sit there, glowing. Legacy backend mess, I repeated slowly. That mess processes 40,000 transactions a second, Derek. It handles the routing logic for your entire fleet. It's not a mess. It's a cathedral. And you're kicking out the stonemason because you want to put up drywall. We have documentation. Derek waved a hand dismissively. We have the wiki. We have the code comments. Anyone can pick it up. Any junior dev fresh out of boot camp could run this system. I looked at Ben. Ben looked at the floor. We both knew the truth. The wiki was 3 years out of date because Derek had cut the budget for technical writers. The code comments were cryptic notes I wrote to myself at 4 a.m., mostly referencing inside jokes and heavy metal lyrics that doubled as encryption keys for my logic flow. Is that so? I asked. You think the documentation is sufficient? I know it is, Derek sneered. I've seen the folders. It's all there. Now hand over the laptop. Security is waiting. One of the engineers, a quiet girl named Sarah who handled the API gateways, raised her hand. She looked terrified. Derek? The encryption keys for the heuristic load shedding protocols, are those in the wiki? Because last time we tried to patch the server without Harper, the whole database locked up for 6 hours. Derek turned on her. We will figure it out, Sarah. That's what I'm paying you for. This is exactly what I mean about a toxic culture of dependency. Harper has made herself a bottleneck on purpose to inflate her value. By removing her, I'm liberating you. Liberating them. He was liberating them from the parachute right before kicking them out of the plane. I stood up, sliding my phone into my pocket. I could feel the heat of the battery against my leg. It felt like leverage. You're right, Derek, I said, my voice dropping to a dead calm. I have been a bottleneck. I've been catching every error, every bad commit, every catastrophic failure before it ever reached the client. I've been the dam holding back the flood. But if you want to be liberated, be free. I closed my laptop. It was a battered ThinkPad covered in stickers, Kubernetes, Linux, a faded I voted sticker from 2016. I unplugged the HDMI cable. The projector screen went blue. No blue screen of death? Derek mocked. I expected more drama. The drama comes later, I said. Usually around 2 a.m. on a Saturday. I unclipped my badge from my belt loop. It was an old badge, the photo taken 10 years ago when I still had hope in my eyes and less caffeine in my bloodstream. I slid it across the mahogany table. It spun, coming to a rest right in front of Derek. There, I said. I'm gone. You got your wish. The fat is trimmed. Don't let the door hit you, Derek muttered, already looking at his phone, probably checking his crypto portfolio. I walked toward the glass doors. My heels clicked on the polished concrete floor, a sound that used to mean the boss is coming, but now meant the adult is leaving. Wait, Ben called out. He stood up, panic in his eyes. Harper, the master credentials for the AWS root account. The multi-factor authentication token. It's on your phone. I stopped at the door. I turned back. The whole room froze. Derek looked up. What root access? Ben stammered. It's tied to Harper's device. If she leaves, we can't push hotfixes. Derek rolled his eyes. So transfer it right now. I looked at Ben. I looked at Derek. And then I remembered the contract clause Derek had made us all sign 3 years ago. A clause intended to stop employees from stealing IP, but written so aggressively it cut both ways. I can't, I said. What do you mean you can't? Derek demanded. Do it. You just fired me, Derek, I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. My employment is terminated, effective immediately. Which means per company security policy section 4, paragraph 2, which you wrote, I am strictly prohibited from accessing, transferring, or modifying any company systems. If I touch that root account now, I'm committing a federal crime. Corporate espionage. I'm authorizing you. Derek shouted. Authorize a non-employee to access root? I shook my head mockingly. Derek, that voids your SOC 2 compliance certification. You'd lose your insurance. You'd lose the bank contracts. Then we'll figure it out, he yelled, his face turning a blotchy red. Just get out. We'll reset it. Good luck with that, I said. Support takes 48 hours to verify identity for a root reset. Hope nothing breaks before Tuesday. I pushed the door open. The air in the hallway felt cooler. Cleaner. Goodbye, Derek, I said. Try not to touch the thermostat. Walking out of a building you helped design is a surreal experience. I passed the server room on the second floor, my baby. I could hear the faint hum of the cooling fans through the fire-rated door. It was a rhythmic, industrial purr that I had tuned perfectly over a decade. I knew which rack vibrated if the AC kicked on too hard. I knew which hard drive slot on cluster B was finicky and needed to be jiggled. It wasn't just hardware, it was an organism, and I had just been surgically removed from its immune system. People looked at me as I walked down the hall. They knew. News travels faster in a tech company than a packet over fiber optics. The Slack channels were probably melting down right now. Asterisk, did you hear? Derek finally did it. Harper's out. We're doomed. Asterisk, I saw heads duck down behind monitors. I saw pity. I saw fear. I didn't stop to say goodbye. Goodbyes are for people who intend to stay friends. I intended to be a cautionary tale. I pushed through the main lobby doors and the humid Washington air hit me like a wet towel. It was raining. Of course it was raining. The sky was the color of a bruised plum. My truck, a beat-up Ford F-150 that I drove specifically because it annoyed Derek's Tesla sensibilities, was parked in the back. I threw my bag into the passenger seat. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. I had just nuked my career of 10 years in under 20 minutes. I sat in the driver's seat, listening to the rain on the roof. I pulled out my phone. The email from Marcus was still open. I scrolled down to the compensation package. Base salary, $320,000. Signing bonus, $50,000. RSU, 15,000 units vesting monthly. Title, Chief Infrastructure Strategist. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was more money than I had ever seen on a single page. It was screw you money. It was I can buy a cabin in the woods and code from a hammock money. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the validation. Derek had called me obsolete. Marcus called me a strategist. A knock on my window made me jump. I looked up. It was Richard, the founder, Derek's father. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was wispy white, and he was wearing a cardigan that had seen better days. He held a golf umbrella, struggling slightly against the wind. Richard was a good engineer in the 90s, but he was a terrible businessman. He handed the reins to Derek because he was tired, not because Derek was ready. I rolled down the window. Harper. Richard squinted at me through the rain. Leaving early? I saw the truck running. Is everything all right? He didn't know. Derek hadn't told him. Of course he hadn't. Derek operated in the shadows until he could present a sanitized version of the truth to his dad. I'm not leaving early, Richard, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm leaving for good. Richard blinked, water dripping from the rim of his umbrella. What? Did you get a better offer? We can match it. You know I was fired, Richard, I cut him off. Derek just terminated me. Said I was obsolete. Said my architecture was vintage. Richard's face went pale. He did what? We have the board meeting next week. The Q4 roadmap. Who is going to present the scaling strategy? Derek is, I said. He's got some consultants coming in. Apparently, I'm the fat that needed trimming. Richard gripped the door handle. No, that's a mistake. I'll talk to him. Just come back inside. We'll fix this. I'm the chairman, for Christ's sake. I looked at this man. This man who had hired me when I was 35, who had given me a chance when other tech bros thought a woman couldn't handle back-end architecture. I felt a pang of sadness, but then I remembered Derek's smirk. I remembered the word redundant. It's too late, I said. Richard, I already accepted another offer. In the room. While Derek was firing me. Who? Richard whispered. Uber, I said. Richard physically recoiled. He knew what that meant. He knew they were our biggest competitor in the logistics space. He knew that if I went there, I wasn't just leaving, I was defecting. Harper, please. The non-compete. Derek voided it, I said ruthlessly. He fired me without cause in Washington state. That makes the non-compete unenforceable. You should check with legal, but I'm pretty sure Derek just handed your playbook to the enemy. Richard looked like he was going to be sick. He turned and looked back at the glass building, his legacy, now being piloted by his idiot son. I have to go inside, Richard stammered. I have to stop him. Good luck, I said. And Richard? Tell Derek that spaghetti code is what Italians call a masterpiece. It's what keeps the sauce from sliding off the plate. But in a server? It's just a fire hazard. I put the truck in gear. I didn't look back as I peeled out of the lot. I turned on the radio. Some classic rock station was playing Burning Down the House by the Talking Heads. I cranked the volume. I drove toward the highway, toward Seattle, toward the future. Behind me, in the rearview mirror, the gray building grew smaller and smaller until it was just a smudge against the rainy sky. Inside that smudge, I knew the chaos was just beginning. Derek had pulled the pin. Now he had to hold the grenade. The first week at Uber was like stepping out of a diesel-choked submarine and walking directly into a high-end spa. My new office had a panoramic view of the Sound. The coffee was single origin and actually hot, and my team, an elite squad of 12 developers who looked at my code like it was scripture, listened when I spoke. There was no mansplaining. There was no justification required for basic math. I drew a diagram and they built it. It was intoxicating. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't keep a tab open on my second monitor. Down detector, mobility tech. For the first 3 days, the line was flat. That's the thing about good architecture, it has inertia. A well-built system can run on autopilot for a while, even if the pilot is dead at the controls. It coasts. But on Thursday, the wobble started. It began with a text from Ben. We weren't supposed to talk. Corporate espionage laws are terrifyingly specific, so he was using a burner signal account. Asterisk Ben, the load balancers are acting weird. Latency is up 400 milliseconds. Derek told us to just reboot the clusters. Asterisk. Asterisk me, don't reboot. The cache needs to warm up. If you reboot during peak hours, you'll cause a thundering herd problem. Asterisk. Asterisk Ben, I know. I told him. He said, reboot it. It's just a computer. We rebooted. Now the database CPU is pegged at 100%. Asterisk. I sipped my latte and watched the little red line on down detector tick upward. A small spike in user reports. Asterisk app is slow. Can't log in. Asterisk I didn't reply to Ben again. I couldn't. Helping him would be helping Derek, and Derek needed to learn that gravity exists. By Friday afternoon, the wobble became a violent shake. I was in a strategy meeting with Marcus, mapping out a new predictive arrival algorithm, when my old company's public status page updated. Status: degraded performance on East Coast nodes. Looks like your old friends are having a rough day, Marcus noted, glancing at the screen. He wasn't gloating. In this business, downtime isn't funny, it's blood in the water. They're rebooting the clusters, I murmured, staring at the metrics. They're trying to clear a memory leak that isn't a memory leak. It's a queue backup. They're flushing the safety valve. Back at the old office, as I later learned, it was pandemonium. Derek had brought in his consultants, 3 guys in Patagonia vests who specialized in agile transformation, but couldn't read a raw SQL query to save their lives. They were staring at the dashboards, which were flashing red and throwing out buzzwords. We need to horizontally scale, one of them shouted. Spin up more instances, Derek commanded. So they did. They spun up 50 new server instances. Here's the thing about the system I built. It had a hard-coded license cap on the third-party mapping API, a cap I had negotiated to save us money. The contract allowed for 100 concurrent connections. When they spun up 50 new servers, the total connections hit 150. The mapping provider's automated system saw the breach of contract. And, as per the terms I had warned Derek about 2 years ago, it instantly revoked the API key. Friday, 4:15 p.m. Every single driver on the mobility tech platform lost their map. I saw it happen in real time on social media. Twitter exploded. WTF, my app just went blank. I'm stuck in traffic and I don't know where I'm going. #mobilitytechfail. Ben texted me again. Just one word. Ben, blackout. I sat in my ergonomic chair, watching the chaos unfold from the safety of the competition. I imagined Derek in the war room, screaming at the consultants, screaming at Ben, screaming at the screens. I imagined him trying to call the mapping vendor, only to realize he didn't know the account number, the password, or the name of the rep because that information was in my Rolodex, the physical one, which was currently in a box in my garage. Should we call them? Marcus asked, half joking. Offer to acquire them for pennies on the dollar? Not yet, I said, turning back to my code. Let them simmer. The weekend is just starting. Monday morning brought the lawyers. I expected them. When a narcissist fails, his first instinct isn't to apologize, it's to find someone to blame. And since Derek couldn't blame the servers for being disloyal, he blamed the architect. I was sitting in Uber's HR orientation when my personal phone buzzed. An email from legal@mobilitytech.com. Subject: Urgent. Demand for return of proprietary data/intellectual property. Ms. Harper, it has come to our attention that critical system documentation and administrative credentials are missing from company repositories. You are hereby ordered to return all encryption keys, root passwords, and architectural schematics within 2 hours, or we will seek immediate injunctive relief and damages for sabotage. Sabotage. That was rich. I excused myself and walked to the break room. I made a cup of tea. Then I opened my laptop and drafted a reply. I didn't need a lawyer for this. To legal@mobilitytech.com. CC Derek Richard. Dear legal team. Per my termination, which involved 0 exit interview and an immediate escort from the building, I surrendered my laptop and badge. I retained nothing. Regarding the missing documentation, all files exist on your Confluence server. However, as I warned management repeatedly, the search function is broken. You need to use tag-based queries. If your current team cannot find the files, it is not because they are missing, it is because they do not know how to ask the library for the book. Regarding the encryption keys, these are stored in the Hardware Security Module, HSM, in the server room. Access requires a physical fob, which I returned, and a PIN. If you have lost the fob, that is a physical security breach. If you don't know the PIN, that is a management failure. I am now an employee of a competitor. Any request for me to explain systems constitutes consulting services. My rate is $5,000 per hour, 10-hour minimum, payable in advance. Regards. Harper. I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Ben. Harper, he whispered. Derek is reading your email. He's purple. He threw a stapler at the wall. Is he going to pay the consulting fee? I asked dryly. He's screaming that you encrypted the documentation on purpose. I didn't encrypt it. I just organized it using logic, and he's trying to read it with a coloring book mindset. Did they find the HSM fob? Yeah, security had it. But nobody knows the PIN. I paused. The PIN. The 6-digit code that unlocked the physical hardware keys for the entire kingdom. Let me guess, I said. Derek wants the PIN. He says if you don't give it to him, he's calling the FBI. Tell him the PIN, I said. I don't care. It's not my problem anymore. What is it? We tried the founding date, Ben said, his voice trembling. It didn't work. And we tried Derek's birthday. It didn't work either. I frowned. That's impossible. I set those myself. Unless. Then it hit me. A memory from 6 months ago. Derek had demanded a security audit. He had insisted on changing all the master pins himself, claiming that too many people know the old ones. Ben, I said slowly. Derek changed the pins in April. He said he wrote them down in his black book. You know, the Moleskine he carries everywhere? The one he left in the Uber on his way to the airport last week. There was a long silence on the other end. Oh God, Ben whispered. He lost the master keys. He locked himself out of his own house and threw the key in a landfill. So, we're screwed. Ben asked. You're not just screwed, Ben. You're bricked. You have to reset the hardware. That wipes the data. All of it. I hung up. I pictured Derek tearing apart his office, looking for a notebook that was probably currently being used as a coaster by a confused driver. The irony was delicious. The vintage architect was the only one who remembered where the keys were, but the modern disruptor had thrown them in the trash. On Wednesday, 2 days after the blackout weekend, I received a file via an anonymous Proton Mail account. No subject line, just a video attachment, board_Q3_emergency_session.mp4. I shouldn't have watched it. But I'm human and I'm petty. I put on my noise-canceling headphones. The video was grainy, recorded from a laptop webcam sitting low on a table, likely Ben's. The board was gathered. Richard sat at the head, looking like a ghost. He had aged 10 years and 10 days. Derek sat to his right, sweating through a suit that cost more than my car. Across from them sat Alina, the representative for the VC firm that owned 30% of the company. Alina didn't suffer fools. She ate them for breakfast. Let me get this straight, Alina said, her voice tinny through the speakers. We have been offline for 72 hours. Our customer churn rate has spiked 12%. And you're telling me we cannot restore the database because of a PIN code. It was a transition error. Derek stammered. When Harper left. Harper, Alina interrupted. Yes, let's talk about Harper. You fired your lead architect, the woman who built this proprietary stack, on the same day you initiated a major restructuring. Where is she now? Derek stayed silent. She is at Uber, Alina said. She started Monday. And according to my sources, she is already leading a team to implement a new predictive logistics feature. Does that sound familiar? That's our roadmap, Derek whispered. It was your roadmap, Alina corrected. Now it's their product. Because you handed them the architect. I am calling for a vote of no confidence, pending a full audit of the IP loss. You can't do that. Derek shouted, desperate. My family holds majority voting rights. Dad? Derek looked at his father. Richard looked at his son. He looked at the chaos. He looked at the stock price ticker on the wall, which was bleeding red. I abstain, Richard whispered. Derek's eyes went wide. Dad? I abstain, Richard repeated, putting his head in his hands. The video ended. I sat back in my chair, sipping a glass of bold Cabernet. The scales had tipped. My phone buzzed. It was Richard. Richard, can we talk? Please. Coffee tomorrow, me, 8 a.m. The Starbucks on 4th. Don't bring Derek, The Starbucks was neutral ground, loud, crowded, smelling of burnt espresso and anxiety. Richard looked like a man who had slept in his clothes. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a check. Signed by him, drawn on his personal account. The amount line was empty. Name your price, Richard said. Come back. We'll fire Derek. We'll make you CTO. Just fix it. I looked at the check. It was tempting, not for the money, but for the power. To walk back in there and take the throne. But then I remembered my team at Uber. I remembered the feeling of building something new instead of patching something old. I can't, Richard, I said, sliding the check back. I've moved on. And frankly, I don't trust you anymore. The clients are leaving, Richard pleaded. FedEx just pulled their contract. If we lose DHL, we're insolvent. The data is encrypted. The backups are corrupted. We're looking at a total rebuild from scratch. It will take 6 months. We have 6 weeks. He leaned in. Harper, you have the logic in your head. You could rebuild the core routing table in a weekend. I took a sip of my tea. I could, I admitted. But I won't do it as an employee. Then as a consultant, Richard said. Whatever you want. I pulled a folded document from my bag. I had typed it up that morning. $1 million, I said. Cash. Richard blinked. A million. And I continued, I want the IP rights to the modular scaling framework I build this weekend. You get a license to use it, but I own the code, which means I can license it to others, including Uber. Richard's jaw dropped. You want to sell our core tech to our competitor? I'm building it, Richard. If you want me to save you, I'm doing it on my terms. You get to survive. I get the patent. That's the deal. He had no choice. Okay, he whispered. Do it. Great. Wire the money. I'll start Friday night. And Richard? Tell Derek he's not allowed in the building while I'm there. I don't want his modern energy messing up my vintage workflow. The office was empty on Friday night. It was just me, the hum of the servers, and $1 million sitting in my bank account. I sat at my old desk. My ergonomic mouse was still there. I cracked my knuckles, plugged in my laptop, and jacked into the mainframe. Hello, old friend, I whispered. The system was a mess. Derek's consultants had tried to patch the API failures with spaghetti code. I didn't fix it. I deleted it. rf/consultant_trash/. I started fresh. I pulled the logic from my brain, the spatial indexing, the load shedding, the vintage architecture that worked because it was built on math, not hype. For 48 hours, I lived in the code. I rebuilt the routing engine from the ground up. It was a masterpiece. By Sunday morning, the sun was coming up. My eyes burned, but the dashboard was all green. System status. Operational. I had done it. I opened the core library, the black box that handled the most complex calculations, and I added one final comment. *// architecture by Harper. Property of Harper Holdings, LLC. License to Mobility Tech revocable upon 30 days notice. P.S. If you are reading this, Derek, you're welcome. I committed the code. I pushed to production. As the servers spun up, my phone buzzed. A press release from Uber. Uber Freight announces Quantum Route, a new predictive logistics engine. I smiled. The project I had started at Uber on Monday was launching today. The code I had just written for Richard was solid, but it was the past. I had just sold them a very expensive, very reliable spare tire. I was already building a jet engine for the competition. I packed my bag and walked out. I didn't feel nostalgic. I felt like a contractor who had just finished a renovation on a house she used to own. Nice house, but I didn't live there anymore. 3 months later, the tech world had moved on. Mobility tech stabilized, they were the safe, legacy option now. Derek was gone, trying to launch a crypto-based dating app. Richard remained as chairman, but the board installed a boring CEO who banned disruption. She calls me once a month to authorize the licensing check for my code. I always answer on the second ring. I like hearing the sound of my passive income. At Uber, we were celebrating the Q4 numbers. Champagne in paper cups. My phone buzzed. An email from Richard. Subject, checking in. *Harper, we're seeing some degradation in the routing speed again. The new CEO wants to know if you'd be open to a retainer to optimize the code, *. I looked at the young engineers around me. Bright kids. Hungry. They didn't call me vintage. They called me boss. I looked back at my phone. I hit forward to my assistant. Message. Please reply to this. Tell them my consulting rate has doubled. And send them a cease and desist if they try to modify the core library without a license extension, *. I put the phone down. I wasn't angry anymore. I had achieved something far more dangerous than revenge. I had leverage. I had built their foundation, watched them burn it, and then forced them to buy the ashes back from me at a premium. I took a sip of champagne. It tasted like victory. The AC vents hummed above me, a perfect, efficient, silent flow. It was working perfectly. And this time, I had the keys.